The gun pressed against Sebastian Quade's temple felt colder than the December rain sliding down the penthouse windows, and the only thing standing between him and a bullet was a woman half his size with eyes like frozen steel. Delilah Brooks had been on the job for exactly 6 hours when Marcus Chen, Sebastian's former business partner, forced his way past security with a weapon and a decade of resentment. She moved faster than Sebastian thought humanly possible, disarming Marcus with a precise strike to his wrist before sweeping his legs and pinning him face down against the marble floor. The entire confrontation lasted 18 seconds. "Stay back, Mr. Quade," Delilah said without looking at him, her knee planted firmly between Marcus's shoulder blades while she secured his wrists with zip ties she'd pulled from somewhere on her person. Her voice carried the kind of calm that only came from extensive training and real experience. Sebastian stood frozen by his desk, his heart hammering against his ribs as reality caught up with what just happened. He'd built a pharmaceutical empire worth $300 million by the age of 35, navigating corporate espionage and hostile takeovers with strategic precision. But nothing prepared him for the visceral terror of having a gun pointed at his head. "Security is on their way up," Delilah continued, finally glancing at Sebastian. Her dark hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail, and despite the violence she just enacted, not a single strand was out of place. "Are you hurt?" Sebastian shook his head, finding his voice. "No, I'm fine." That was incredible. She didn't acknowledge the compliment. Within minutes, building security arrived with police in tow, and Marcus was hauled away still screaming about patent theft and betrayal. Sebastian watched the chaos unfold while Delilah gave a precise, efficient statement to the officers, her professional demeanor never wavering. After everyone left, Sebastian poured himself a scotch with shaking hands. The city lights of Chicago sparkled 40 stories below, oblivious to the violence that had just unfolded. "You should sit down," Delilah said, studying him with those sharp eyes. "Adrenaline crash will hit soon." "I've had bodyguards before," Sebastian said, lowering himself into his leather chair. "None of them ever moved like that." "The previous team was for show," Delilah replied, positioning herself by the window where she could monitor both the door and Sebastian simultaneously. "Your head of security called my agency because the threats against you escalated from online harassment to actionable danger. Marcus Chen has been planning this for 3 weeks. We've been monitoring his communications. You knew he was coming. We knew he'd try something. The timing was uncertain." She adjusted her stance slightly, and Sebastian noticed the subtle way she favored her right side, probably from years of training that became ingrained habit. "Your previous security team missed 17 vulnerabilities in this building alone. We've already implemented fixes for 12 of them. The remaining 5 require cooperation from building management." Sebastian took a long drink, letting the scotch burn away some of the lingering fear. "How long have you been doing this?" 8 years active duty in close protection. 4 years military before that. She didn't volunteer anything else. "And my company hired your agency. Why exactly?" "Because we're the best." No arrogance in her voice, just fact. "And because you have 4 credible death threats active right now, Mr. Quade." Marcus Chen was threat number 3. We're still monitoring the others. The weight of that settled over Sebastian like a heavy blanket. He knew his aggressive business tactics made enemies, knew that his company's recent breakthrough in affordable insulin production had devastated competitors, but he'd convinced himself the angry emails and social media rants were just noise. "Call me Sebastian," he said finally. "If you're going to be following me around, we might as well drop the formalities. I'm here to protect you, not be your friend." Delilah's expression didn't change. Professional distance is important. Noted. Sebastian studied her, taking in details he'd missed during the chaos. She was probably late 20s, athletic build, and carried herself with the kind of confidence that came from knowing exactly what she was capable of. How does this work exactly? You just follow me everywhere. 24/7 protection until the threats are neutralized. I'll be your primary guard during waking hours. My partner, Rodriguez, handles nights. We switch off every 12 hours. Someone's going to be in my home at night. Someone's going to be outside your bedroom door at night, Delilah corrected. We've already installed additional security measures in your penthouse. Motion sensors, upgraded cameras, reinforced entry points. Sebastian rubbed his face, exhaustion suddenly crashing over him. This is insane. This is necessary. Delilah moved away from the window, her movements fluid and controlled. You should go home. Get some rest. Tomorrow we'll review your schedule and discuss protocols. The ride down in the private elevator was silent except for the mechanical hum. Delilah stood slightly behind Sebastian, her attention constantly scanning their surroundings. He'd never felt so simultaneously safe and exposed. His driver, James, was waiting in the underground garage with the usual Mercedes sedan. Delilah slid into the front passenger seat without asking, positioning herself where she could react to threats from any direction. "Evening, Mr. Quade," James said, catching Sebastian's eye in the rearview mirror. "Heard there was some excitement upstairs." "Delilah handled it," Sebastian replied, watching the bodyguard's reflection. She was already scanning the garage, noting every car, every shadow, every potential danger. The drive to his penthouse in the Gold Coast took 20 minutes through evening traffic. Sebastian tried to process everything that happened, but his mind kept returning to those 18 seconds when Delilah had moved like violence personified, all precision and controlled power. Over the next few days, Sebastian learned what it meant to have Delilah Brooks as a constant presence in his life. She was there when he woke up, having already replaced Rodriguez at dawn. She accompanied him to board meetings, standing by the door with perfect posture while he negotiated million-dollar deals. She sat in his office during conference calls, reading reports on her tablet while simultaneously monitoring the security feeds. She was professional, efficient, and utterly impersonal. "You don't talk much," Sebastian observed one afternoon while they sat in his office. He'd been reviewing acquisition proposals, trying to focus while acutely aware of her presence. "Talking isn't my job. What if I want conversation?" "Then hire a companion." She didn't look up from her tablet. "I'm here to keep you alive." Sebastian felt oddly stung by the dismissal, though he couldn't explain why. He'd never cared about staff being friendly before. His previous bodyguards had been interchangeable presences he barely noticed. But Delilah was different. She commanded attention without trying, moved through space like water, and possessed a kind of self-assurance that Sebastian found himself drawn to despite her emotional distance. "Tell me about the other threats," he said, changing tactics. If she wouldn't engage personally, maybe she'd engage professionally. Delilah finally looked up, considering him with those frost-gray eyes. "Threat 1 is Veronica Marsh, former executive at Patterson Pharmaceuticals. She blames you personally for her company's bankruptcy after your insulin product launched. Mostly venting online, but she's been researching your home address and daily routines. And Threat 2, anonymous online presence calling themselves Justice Seeker. Posted detailed fantasies about your death on multiple forums. We're working with cybersecurity to trace their actual identity. And Threat 4, Thomas Wright, father of a daughter who died from rationed insulin 3 years ago. His grief is justified, but it's become focused on you as a symbol of pharmaceutical greed, despite your company being the one that made affordable insulin available. Delilah's voice remained neutral, delivering facts without judgment. He's been attending your public speaking events, getting progressively more agitated. Sebastian felt the weight of that. His daughter died because she couldn't afford insulin, and now he wants me dead even though I'm trying to fix that exact problem. Grief doesn't follow logic. Something flickered in Delilah's expression, gone too quickly to interpret. People need someone to blame. Speaking from experience, the walls went back up instantly. Speaking from observation, Sebastian let it drop but filed away that moment of vulnerability. Delilah Brooks wasn't quite as impenetrable as she pretended. The following week brought a new challenge when Sebastian had to attend a pharmaceutical industry gala. He hated these events normally, found them tedious performances where competitors pretended to be colleagues. But having Delilah beside him in a black suit that somehow made her look even more dangerous added a surreal quality to the evening. "Stay within 10 feet of me at all times," she instructed as they entered the ballroom. "If I tell you to move, you move immediately without question. You're expecting trouble. I'm always expecting trouble. That's why you're still alive." The gala proceeded as these things always did. Sebastian made the rounds, shaking hands and making small talk while mentally counting down the minutes until he could leave. Delilah shadowed him throughout, a silent presence that other attendees tried not to stare at too obviously. "Sebastian Quade," a voice called out, dripping with false warmth. Sebastian turned to find Richard Mallory approaching, CEO of Henderson Pharma and one of Sebastian's most vocal critics. "Richard." Sebastian kept his tone professionally neutral. "Didn't expect to see you here. Wouldn't miss it." Richard's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Heard you had some excitement at your office last week. Marcus Chen, wasn't it? Always said you made enemies with your aggressive tactics." Sebastian felt Delilah shift almost imperceptibly closer. Marcus was disturbed. It had nothing to do with business. "Of course not." Richard's gaze slid to Delilah, assessing. "Need a bodyguard now. Must be stressful living with that kind of fear." "The only thing I fear is boring conversation," Sebastian replied smoothly. "If you'll excuse us." He guided them away before Richard could respond, feeling Delilah's approval in the way she matched his stride. "He's not a threat," she said quietly. "Just an asshole." Sebastian nearly choked on his champagne. It was the first remotely personal comment she'd made in a week. "Glad we agree on something. I'm paid to assess threats, not personalities." But there was the faintest hint of amusement in her voice. They made it through the rest of the evening without incident, and Sebastian found himself disappointed when they finally left. The ride home was quiet, but it felt like a different kind of silence than before. Something had shifted, some invisible barrier thinning. "Thank you," Sebastian said as they entered his penthouse. Rodriguez was already there, ready to take over for the night shift. "For tonight, I mean." "And for everything." Delilah nodded, already transitioning into handoff mode with her partner. "Get some sleep, Mr. Quade. You have an early meeting." But before she left, she glanced back at him, and Sebastian could have sworn he saw something warmer than professional courtesy in her expression. The next morning, Sebastian woke to his phone buzzing with urgent messages. He grabbed it groggily, then shot upright as he read the news alert. Thomas Wright, threat number 4, had been arrested overnight trying to break into Sebastian's office building with a knife, and what he claimed was enough explosive material to level the floor. Delilah was already at his bedroom door when he opened it, fully dressed and alert despite the early hour. "You saw the news," she said. It wasn't a question. Wright was going to bomb my office. Homemade explosive device. Poorly constructed but functional. Building security caught him attempting entry at 3 a.m. Police have him in custody. Delilah stepped into the room, and Sebastian suddenly became aware he was only wearing pajama pants. "So that's threat number 4 neutralized," he said, grabbing a shirt from his closet. "Yes." "Which leaves 3 active threats, though Veronica Marsh has been quiet the past few days. We're monitoring." Sebastian pulled on the shirt, his mind racing. "This is real. I mean, I knew it was real, but Marcus felt personal. This feels like random violence. It's not random. Wright has been fixating on you for months. This was always the likely outcome." Delilah's voice softened slightly. "But yes, it's real, which is why you need to take this seriously." "I am taking it seriously." Sebastian met her eyes, seeing past the professional mask to genuine concern underneath. "I have been since you threw Marcus to the ground like he weighed nothing." Something passed between them in that moment, recognition of a shift that had been building since that first violent encounter. Delilah looked away first. "Get dressed. I'll make coffee." She left before Sebastian could respond, and he stood there feeling like he'd almost touched something important only to have it slip away. Over the following weeks, the dynamic between them continued to evolve in small, almost imperceptible ways. Delilah still maintained professional boundaries, but she talked more, shared observations about the people they encountered, occasionally offered opinions that had nothing to do with security. Sebastian found himself looking forward to their morning routines, the quiet drive to the office, the way she'd hand him coffee exactly how he liked it without ever having asked his preference. She'd simply observed and remembered. "You don't have to do that," he said one morning when she passed him his cup. "Do what? Get my coffee. That's not part of protecting me." Delilah settled into her usual position by the window. "Consider it preventative care. You're less likely to make stupid decisions when properly caffeinated." Sebastian laughed and was rewarded with a small smile from her. Progress. The breakthrough came during a business trip to New York. Sebastian had a series of meetings with potential investors, and Delilah insisted on traveling with him despite the additional coordination it required. They were in his hotel suite reviewing the next day's schedule when the power suddenly cut out, plunging them into darkness. Sebastian heard Delilah move before his eyes could adjust, her hand finding his arm with unerring accuracy. "Stay still," she whispered, her breath warm against his ear. Could be nothing, could be something. Sebastian's heart rate kicked up, but not entirely from fear. They stood frozen in the darkness, Delilah's body close enough that he could feel her heat, her absolute focus on the situation. After what felt like an eternity but was probably less than 2 minutes, the emergency lights flickered on, followed by the main power. Delilah released his arm and immediately checked her phone. "Building-wide electrical issue," she reported after a tense minute. "Maintenance is working on it." "Not targeted. Good." Sebastian released a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. "You can relax. I don't relax on the job. I've noticed." Sebastian moved to the window, looking out at the Manhattan skyline. "Do you ever relax off the job, I mean?" "Sometimes." "What do you do?" He turned to face her, genuinely curious. "When you're not protecting ungrateful millionaires, you're not ungrateful." Delilah set her phone down, and Sebastian realized she was actually considering answering his question. "I run, train at the gym, raid." "What do you raid?" "History, mostly." "Military history, specifically?" "Not romance novels," Sebastian teased. "Not really my speed." But she almost smiled. "Why do you read romance novels?" "I read pharmaceutical journals and acquisition reports. Equally thrilling." This time she did smile, and Sebastian felt absurdly pleased with himself for earning it. "Can I ask you something?" he ventured, sensing an opening. "Personal question." Delilah's expression became guarded. "You can ask." "Why close protection? With your skills, you could do anything." She was quiet for a long moment, weighing how much to share. "I'm good at it, and it matters. Keeping people safe matters. There's more to it than that." "Yes," she met his eyes directly, "but that's all I'm willing to share right now." Sebastian nodded, respecting the boundary even as he wanted to push past it. "Fair enough." They stood in comfortable silence, the New York night bright with artificial lights beyond the window, and Sebastian realized with startling clarity that he'd started caring about Delilah Brooks as more than just his bodyguard. The thought should have worried him. Office relationships were complicated enough, without adding the dynamic of employer and employee, protector and protected. But Sebastian had built his success on taking calculated risks, and everything about this felt worth the risk. The question was whether Delilah felt anything beyond professional obligation. He got his answer 3 days after they returned to Chicago. Sebastian was working late in his home office when he heard raised voices from the penthouse entrance. He emerged to find Delilah blocking a woman in her 50s from entering further, Rodriguez backing her up. "Veronica Marsh," Delilah said without taking her eyes off the intruder. "Threat number 1. Mr. Quade, please return to your office and lock the door." "How did she get up here?" Sebastian demanded, not moving, posed as food delivery, got past the front desk. Delilah's voice was calm but hard. "Miss Marsh, you need to leave now. Security is on the way." "I just want to talk to him," Veronica said, her voice shaking with emotion. "He destroyed my life. He needs to understand what he did." "I didn't destroy your life," Sebastian said, moving closer despite Delilah's warning look. "Your company made insulin unaffordable for millions of people. Mine made it accessible. You undercut us on purpose, drove us into bankruptcy. I competed." "That's how business works." "Sebastian, step back," Delilah said sharply. But Sebastian was tired of being threatened, tired of being the villain in other people's stories when he'd worked so hard to fix a broken system. "You want to blame someone for your company failing. Blame your CEO who prioritized profits over patients. Blame a healthcare system that forces people to choose between medication and rent. Don't blame me for trying to fix it." Veronica's face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I lost everything. I'm sorry for that, genuinely." Sebastian felt his anger drain away, replaced by something closer to pity. "But threatening me won't get your job back." Building security arrived then, along with police, and Veronica was escorted away without further resistance. After everyone left, Sebastian found himself shaking again, the adrenaline crash hitting hard. "You should have stayed in your office," Delilah said, her voice tight with suppressed anger. "I told you to lock the door." She wasn't dangerous, just desperate. "You don't know that." "She could have had a weapon. You could have been hurt." Delilah's professional composure cracked, revealing genuine fear underneath. "You don't get to take risks with your life when I'm responsible for protecting it." "I'm sorry." Sebastian realized she was actually scared, and the realization settled something in his chest. "You're right, I wasn't thinking." "No, you weren't." Delilah's hands were shaking slightly, and she clenched them into fists. "I can't do my job if you won't let me." "Hey." Sebastian stepped closer, close enough to touch but not quite crossing that line. "I'm okay. You kept me safe. You always keep me safe." Delilah looked at him then, really looked at him, and Sebastian saw the exact moment when her professional walls began to crack. "You're not just a job anymore." The admission hung between them, heavy with implication. "Good," Sebastian said softly, "because you're not just my bodyguard anymore either." "Sebastian." His name on her lips sounded like a prayer and a warning. We can't. Why not? Because I'm supposed to be objective, professional. I can't protect you properly if I'm emotionally compromised. You just confronted an intruder in my home. Seems like you're protecting me just fine. That's not the point. But she didn't move away. Then what is the point? Sebastian took another step closer, close enough now that he could see the flecks of silver in her gray eyes. Because from where I'm standing, the only thing stopping us is fear. Fear keeps people alive in my line of work. And what about living? What about that? Delilah closed her eyes briefly, some internal battle playing out across her features. When she opened them again, her expression had shifted from conflict to decision. If we do this, she said quietly, we do it right. No secrets, no games, and you follow my security protocols without question. Deal, deal. Sebastian's heart hammered with hope and want and the thrilling uncertainty of jumping off a cliff. So what happens now? Now I'm going to kiss you, Delilah said, and then we're going to talk about how complicated this is going to make everything. I can live with complicated. She kissed him then, and it was nothing like Sebastian expected. There was no hesitation, no uncertainty. Delilah kissed like she fought, with complete commitment and devastating precision. Her hands found his face, holding him steady while she thoroughly dismantled every remaining barrier between them. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Sebastian felt like he'd been hit by lightning. Okay, he managed. Complicated is definitely worth it. Delilah laughed, actually laughed, and the sound was beautiful. This is such a bad idea. I've built a $300 million company on bad ideas that turned out brilliant. Your confidence is either attractive or concerning. I haven't decided which. Can it be both? She kissed him again, softer this time, and Sebastian felt something click into place that he hadn't known was missing. They talked for hours after that, sitting on his couch while city lights painted shadows across the floor. Delilah told him about growing up in rural Montana, about joining the military at 18 to escape a small town that felt suffocating, about finding purpose in protecting others. Sebastian shared his own story, the scholarship kid from the South Side who'd fought his way into Northwestern and then into pharmaceutical research, driven by watching his mother ration her own medications to make ends meet. That's why you did it, Delilah said, understanding dawning. The affordable insulin. It was personal. Everything worth doing is personal. Sebastian laced his fingers through hers, marveling at how right it felt. My mom died 3 years ago from complications that could have been prevented if she'd been able to afford proper treatment. So yes, it was personal. It is personal. Thomas Wright's daughter died 3 years ago. I know. Sebastian's voice roughened. I know I can't save everyone. I know making insulin affordable now doesn't bring back the people who died before. But I can try to make sure fewer people die going forward. Delilah squeezed his hand. You're not the villain they think you are. I'm not a hero either. I'm just someone trying to do something useful with money and privilege. That's more than most people with your resources do. They fell silent, comfortable now in each other's presence without the professional barriers. Eventually, Rodriguez knocked discreetly to signal the shift change, and reality intruded on their bubble. I should let you sleep, Delilah said, reluctance clear in her voice. Or you could stay. Sebastian caught her hand when she started to rise. Not for anything, just to sleep. I'd feel safer with you here. That's a terrible line. Good thing I mean it genuinely then. Delilah considered him for a long moment, then nodded. I'll stay. But I'm keeping my phone close, and if there's any security alert, professional mode comes back immediately. Understood. They fell asleep on his couch, Delilah tucked against Sebastian's side with her head on his chest. And for the first time in months, Sebastian slept without nightmares of guns and death threats. Morning brought logistical complications, as Delilah had predicted. They had to tell Rodriguez, who took the news with professional calm and a knowing look that suggested he'd seen this coming. Then they had to inform the security agency, which required a lengthy conversation with Delilah's supervisor about maintaining professional standards and protocols. They're assigning additional oversight, Delilah explained after the call. Someone will periodically review my performance to ensure the relationship isn't compromising my judgment. And if they decide it is, then they replace me with another guard. She said it evenly, but Sebastian heard the worry underneath. That's not happening. Sebastian pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her shampoo. We'll prove we can make this work. You sound very confident for someone whose bodyguard kissed him less than 12 hours ago. Like I said, I'm good with calculated risks. The following weeks tested that confidence repeatedly. Learning to balance their personal relationship with Delilah's professional responsibilities required constant communication and adjustment. Sebastian had to accept that when Delilah went into protection mode, her focus had to be on security first. And Delilah had to learn to trust that Sebastian would follow her protocols without resentment. They fought about it once, after Sebastian tried to wave off a security sweep of a restaurant because he was hungry and impatient. You don't get to override my professional judgment because you're my boyfriend, Delilah said flatly, standing her ground in the parking lot while Rodriguez swept the interior. I'm not trying to override anything. I'm just saying maybe we don't need to treat every meal like a military operation. There's still one active threat against you. Justice seeker hasn't been identified yet. Until that happens, yes, we treat every meal like a military operation. This is ridiculous. You know what's ridiculous? That I have to argue with you about this. You hired my agency because you took the threat seriously. Don't stop now just because you're sleeping with me. The words landed like a slap, and Sebastian felt instant regret for his impatience. You're right. I'm sorry. That was stupid. Delilah's expression softened slightly. I need you to trust me to do my job, even when it's inconvenient. I do trust you. I just miss the parts of my life that used to feel normal. I know. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. I'm sorry this is what your life looks like right now. But I need you alive more than I need you happy with me. Do you understand? Sebastian did understand, and the fierceness of her commitment to his safety made him fall even harder for her. I'll be patient. I promise. Good. Because Rodriguez just signaled all clear and I'm actually starving. They made it work through compromise and communication. And slowly the relationship deepened into something neither of them had expected. Sebastian learned that Delilah was funny when she relaxed, that she had a secret fondness for terrible action movies, that she cried during documentaries about military dogs. Delilah learned that Sebastian was secretly insecure about whether he deserved his success, that he donated anonymously to diabetes research foundations, that he fell asleep reading pharmaceutical journals and would deny it if confronted. They learned each other's rhythms and patterns, the way couples do when they're building something real. 3 months after that first kiss, the cybersecurity team finally traced Justice Seeker to a teenager in Oregon who'd been making threats online to impress his friends, with no actual intent or capability to follow through. With all threats neutralized, Sebastian's security requirements decreased dramatically. We could scale back to passive monitoring, Delilah said, reviewing the updated threat assessment in Sebastian's office. You wouldn't need active close protection anymore. Sebastian looked up from his computer. What does that mean for us? It means I wouldn't be your assigned guard anymore. Delilah set down the report, her expression carefully neutral. Agency policy prohibits personal relationships with active clients. But if you're no longer an active close protection client, just on monitoring status, then there's no conflict. So we could be together without restrictions. Yes, Sebastian heard the unspoken hesitation in her voice. But I'd need a new assignment. Close protection is what I do. The agency would place me with another client. The thought of Delilah protecting someone else, being that close to someone else, spending all her time focused on another person's safety, hit Sebastian harder than expected. Where would they send you? Could be anywhere. Could be Chicago, could be New York, could be Los Angeles. Depends on client needs. So we'd see each other when your schedule allows. Welcome to dating someone in close protection. Delilah tried for light but didn't quite achieve it. It's not a normal 9-to-5 job. Sebastian leaned back in his chair, thinking. His company had been pushing him to establish a permanent security department, especially given the threats he'd faced. The board wanted dedicated personnel, integrated systems, proper protocols. An idea formed, risky and possibly insane, but then again, those were his specialty. What if you didn't take another assignment? He said slowly. Sebastian, I need to work. I know. What if you worked for me? Officially, I mean, head of security for Quad Pharmaceuticals. We need someone to build out a proper department, manage threat assessment, coordinate protection for our executives. The board's been on me about it for months. Delilah stared at him. You're offering me a job. I'm offering you the job you're already qualified for. You've been assessing our vulnerabilities since day one. You know our weak points better than anyone. Sebastian warmed to the idea as he spoke. You'd have a team, real resources, the ability to implement proper security protocols company-wide. And you wouldn't be in close protection anymore, so no policy violations. This sounds like you're creating a position just so we can be together. I'm creating a position my company needs and offering it to the most qualified person I know. The fact that I'm also in love with her is just convenient timing. Delilah went very still. You're in love with me. Sebastian realized what he'd just said, but looking at Delilah's shocked expression, he couldn't bring himself to take it back. Yes, I'm in love with you. Have been for a while now, honestly. I know that's probably too fast and too complicated, but there it is. Sebastian. Delilah crossed to him, cupping his face in her hands. You're an idiot. Not the response I was hoping for. An idiot, she continued, because it's not too fast or too complicated. I'm in love with you too. Sebastian pulled her down onto his lap, relief and joy flooding through him. Yeah, she kissed him thoroughly. And yes, I'll take the job. Assuming it's a real offer and not just romance-induced insanity. It's both. I specialize in romance-induced insanity that turns out to be brilliant business decisions. Your confidence really is concerning. You love it. I really do. The transition took 6 weeks to finalize. Delilah gave proper notice to her agency, worked with Sebastian's HR department to establish the new security division, and began recruiting a team of specialists to implement comprehensive protection protocols. Sebastian watched her flourish in the role, bringing military precision and strategic thinking to every aspect of corporate security. She was brilliant at it, commanding respect from everyone she worked with while building systems that made the entire company safer. They kept the relationship quiet at first, wanting to establish Delilah's professional credibility before adding the complication of their personal connection. But when they finally went public at the company's annual gala, arriving together with Delilah in a stunning navy dress that made Sebastian's heart stop, the response was overwhelmingly positive. About time, his CFO said, clapping Sebastian on the shoulder. "We all saw this coming months ago." "That obvious." You look at her like she hung the moon. It was either going to be a relationship or a restraining order. Sebastian laughed, watching Delilah navigate the room with the same tactical awareness she brought to everything, except now she was using it to avoid boring conversations rather than assess threats. "She did save my life. And you gave her a career opportunity. Sounds like a fair trade." It was more than a fair trade, Sebastian thought. It was everything. A year later, on the anniversary of the day Delilah had thrown Marcus Chen to the ground and changed both their lives forever, Sebastian took her back to his penthouse. They'd been living together for 6 months, their routines intertwined in ways that felt both comfortable and exciting. "Close your eyes," Sebastian said as they entered the apartment. "I don't like surprises. They're security nightmares. I promise no one's trying to kill me. Just trust me." Delilah sighed but complied, letting Sebastian guide her through the living room to the balcony. The Chicago skyline sparkled with evening lights, the lake a dark expanse beyond the city's glow. "Okay, open." She opened her eyes to find rose petals scattered across the balcony, candles flickering in glass holders, and Sebastian dropping to one knee with a ring box in his hand. "Oh my God," Delilah breathed. "Delilah Brooks," Sebastian said, his voice only shaking slightly. "A year ago you saved my life. You've been saving it every day since, not from death threats but from the loneliness of living without purpose beyond work. You make me laugh, you make me better, and you make me believe in possibilities I never considered before." Tears were streaming down Delilah's face now, and Sebastian had to pause to maintain his own composure. "I love you more than I thought it was possible to love another person. And I know we have to deal with security concerns and professional complications and all the logistics that come with being who we are. But I want to deal with all of it with you for the rest of my life. Will you marry me?" "Yes." Delilah was pulling him up before he could finish. "Yes. Absolutely yes." The ring was platinum with a princess-cut diamond, elegant and simple like Delilah herself. Sebastian slid it onto her finger with shaking hands, then kissed her while the city sparkled around them and the future stretched out full of promise. They were married 6 months later in a small ceremony at a historic mansion in Lake Forest, surrounded by close friends and family. Delilah wore a simple white dress that somehow made her look both warrior-like and ethereal. Sebastian wore his best suit and couldn't stop smiling. Rodriguez served as groomsman, having become one of Sebastian's closest friends through proximity, and shared appreciation for Delilah's particular brand of intensity. Delilah's sister, Deanna, flew in from Montana to serve as maid of honor, and Sebastian finally understood where Delilah got her fierce loyalty from. The ceremony was short, focused on the promises they made to each other rather than elaborate traditions. When the officiant pronounced them married and Sebastian kissed his wife for the first time, he felt like every risk he'd ever taken, every threat he'd faced, every moment of fear had been worth it to arrive at this moment. The reception was held in the mansion's gardens, string lights creating constellations overhead, while music drifted through the warm September evening. Sebastian and Delilah had their first dance to a jazz standard, moving together with the same synchronicity they'd developed in every other aspect of their lives. "Happy?" Delilah asked, her hand resting over Sebastian's heart. "Incredibly." He pulled her closer, breathing in the scent of her perfume mixed with the garden flowers. I never thought I'd have this. The job always came first. I never imagined finding someone who understood that and loved me anyway." "I don't love you anyway. I love you because you're dedicated and fierce and unwilling to compromise on what matters. Those things aren't obstacles to overcome. They're part of what makes you extraordinary. See, this is why I married you. You say things like that and mean them. I always mean them. They swayed together as the music shifted to another song, surrounded by people they loved, building a life neither had planned but both desperately wanted. 2 years into their marriage, Delilah discovered she was pregnant. She told Sebastian during breakfast on a random Tuesday, just set down the positive test next to his coffee cup and waited for his reaction. Sebastian stared at the test, his brain taking a moment to process what he was seeing. Then he was up and around the table, pulling Delilah into his arms with a force that made her laugh. "Really?" he asked, pulling back to search her face. "We're really having a baby, really. I'm about 8 weeks along. I wanted to be sure before telling you." Sebastian kissed her, tasting coffee and possibility and the future taking another unexpected turn toward joy. "This is incredible. How are you feeling?" "Nauseous in the mornings, tired all the time and weirdly emotional about everything. But good. Scared but good. We're going to be parents." "Yeah." Delilah's hand found her still flat stomach instinctively. "That's absolutely terrifying. We survived death threats and corporate espionage. We can handle a baby. A baby doesn't file threat reports or follow security protocols. We'll figure it out together, like everything else." Pregnancy suited Delilah in ways she claimed to hate, but Sebastian found beautiful. She maintained her work schedule and training routine throughout, adjusting for physical changes with the same tactical efficiency she brought to everything else. Sebastian attended every doctor's appointment, watched ultrasound images with wonder, and spent hours researching the best security systems for nurseries. "You're being ridiculous," Delilah said when he showed her the 18th baby monitor comparison chart. "Our child is going to have the most secure nursery in Illinois at this rate. Is there such a thing as too secure? When you're comparing military-grade surveillance systems for a baby's room, yes. I just want them safe." Delilah softened, taking the tablet from his hands. "They will be safe. They have you for a father and me for a mother. That kid is going to be protected and loved beyond measure. And probably really good at threat assessment. God help their future partners." Their daughter, Sophie Quade, arrived on a snowy February morning after 12 hours of labor that Sebastian would remember as the most terrifying and awe-inspiring of his life. Delilah was incredible throughout, focused and determined even in pain, and when they finally placed Sophie in her arms, Sebastian watched his wife transform into something even more extraordinary than before. "Hi, baby," Delilah whispered, tears streaming down her face. "We've been waiting for you." Sophie had Delilah's dark hair and Sebastian's blue eyes, with tiny perfect features that made Sebastian's heart physically ache. He'd built a pharmaceutical empire, survived assassination attempts and navigated corporate warfare, but nothing had prepared him for the overwhelming love he felt looking at his daughter. "She's perfect," he managed, his voice rough with emotion. "She really is." Delilah looked up at him, her expression radiant despite exhaustion. "We made a person, Sebastian, an actual tiny perfect person. You made a person. I was just along for the ride. Partners in everything, remember." Sebastian leaned down to kiss both his wife and daughter, feeling the weight and wonder of family settling over him like a blessing. The early months of parenthood were chaotic and exhausting, and more fulfilling than Sebastian could have imagined. They navigated feedings and diaper changes and sleepless nights as a team, supporting each other through the challenges with the same communication and compromise that had built their relationship. Delilah took maternity leave from her security director role, but maintained oversight of critical projects, unwilling to fully disconnect from work she'd built from nothing. Sebastian reduced his own hours, delegating more to his executive team so he could be present for his family. They had help, of course, resources that made everything easier, but they both insisted on being hands-on parents. Sophie deserved to be raised by them, not outsourced to nannies and staff. "She smiled at me today," Sebastian announced one evening, bursting into the nursery where Delilah was feeding Sophie. "An actual real smile, not just gas. She's been smiling for a week. You're just now noticing. That was different. This one was specifically for me." She looked right at me and smiled. Delilah laughed, the sound mixing with Sophie's contented baby noises. "Okay, Mr. Observant, what gave it away?" "I sang that song you hate, the one from the commercial," and she smiled. Clearly she has excellent taste. "Our daughter smiled at terrible advertising music. That's what you're proud of." "I'm proud of everything about her." Sebastian settled beside them, watching his daughter nurse with the same wonder he felt every time he saw them together. "She's incredible. She is. Even if she has questionable taste in music." Life found a rhythm as Sophie grew. She was an easy baby, curious and alert, seeming to study the world around her with the same tactical assessment her mother brought to security threats. By her first birthday, she was walking early and getting into everything, requiring constant vigilance that had Delilah joking about installing motion sensors in the house. "She's going to be a handful," Rodriguez observed during Sophie's first birthday party, watching her determinedly climb onto a chair despite multiple interventions. "She's going to be extraordinary," Sebastian corrected, catching his daughter before she could tumble off the furniture. "Just like her mother. God help us all if she inherits Delilah's stubbornness." "Too late," Delilah said, appearing with birthday cake. "She's definitely inherited that." The party was filled with colleagues turned friends from both the pharmaceutical company and security division, along with family who traveled from Montana and the South Side. Sebastian looked around at the gathered people, at his daughter covered in frosting, at his wife laughing with her sister, and felt the specific contentment that comes from building exactly the life you needed. 2 years later, they expanded their family again with a son they named Daniel Marcus Quade, after no one in particular, but with names they both loved. Daniel was different from Sophie, quieter and more contemplative, seeming to study everything before acting. "He's going to be the strategic thinker," Delilah predicted, watching their son carefully examine a toy block before precisely placing it on a tower. "As opposed to Sophie, who's going to be what? The force of nature who breaks down doors first and asks questions later." Sebastian laughed because it was accurate. At 3 years old, Sophie approached life with fearless enthusiasm, while baby Daniel preferred careful observation. Together they were chaos and calm, energy and thoughtfulness. Raising 2 children while running a pharmaceutical company and a corporate security division required even more coordination than before. Sebastian and Delilah became experts at divide and conquer parenting, at maximizing time together as a family, at maintaining their relationship amidst the beautiful chaos of parenthood. They still made time for each other, instituting weekly date nights and stealing moments of connection between meetings and bedtime routines. The physical attraction that had sparked between them that first violent night never faded, but it had been joined by deeper intimacy, the kind built through shared experience and mutual respect. "You ever miss it?" Sebastian asked one night after they'd gotten both kids to sleep. They were sprawled on the couch, Delilah's feet in his lap while he absently massaged them. "The field work, I mean. Active protection." Delilah considered the question seriously. "Sometimes I miss the adrenaline, the clear objectives, but what I'm building now is bigger than any single assignment. I'm creating systems that protect hundreds of people, not just one client. That matters more. And the personal aspect, being my wife instead of my bodyguard, best career move I ever made. She squeezed his hand with her foot. Though technically I'm still protecting you. Just with better benefits now. The benefits are excellent, Sebastian agreed, pulling her closer. Health care, retirement, unlimited snuggling. You did not just say snuggling. I absolutely did. What are you going to do about it? Delilah showed him exactly what she was going to do about it. And Sebastian reflected that some benefits were definitely better than others. On the 5th anniversary of the day, Marcus Chen had put a gun to Sebastian's head and changed everything. They returned to the penthouse office where it all began. The building had upgraded security significantly since then, implementing many of Delilah's recommendations, but the space still held memories of violence and fear and possibility. Hard to believe it's been 5 years, Sebastian said, standing in the spot where he'd frozen with a gun to his temple. Hard to believe I fell in love with my client, Delilah replied, positioning herself where she'd stood that night, ready to act. Terrible professional judgment on my part. Best judgment of your life. That too. They stood in comfortable silence, remembering and grateful. The threats had ended, the dangers had passed, but what they'd built together remained and grew stronger every day. Thank you, Sebastian said finally, for saving my life that night. You already thanked me, several thousand times in fact. I meant for saving my life every day since, for showing me what it means to be part of a real team, a real partnership, for giving me a family I never knew I needed. Delilah crossed to him, sliding into his embrace like she'd been designed to fit there. You saved my life too, you know. I was going through the motions before you, good at my job but empty everywhere else. You gave me purpose beyond duty. We saved each other then. Yeah. She kissed him softly. We really did. 10 years after that first violent encounter, Sebastian stood in the backyard of their home in Oak Park, watching his children play while Delilah organized what she called a tactical barbecue, but everyone else called a normal family gathering. Sophie was 8 now, fierce and brilliant and already expressing interest in martial arts. Daniel was 6, thoughtful and creative, currently explaining the physics of the swing set to his patient grandfather. Rodriguez was there with his wife and kids, along with key members of both the pharmaceutical company and security division. Deanna had flown in from Montana with her family, and Sebastian's brother had driven up from the south side with his teenagers. You look contemplative, Delilah said, appearing beside him with 2 beers. She'd traded her bodyguard suits for jeans and a casual shirt, though Sebastian could still see the tactical awareness in how she positioned herself to observe the entire gathering. Just thinking about how different life is now compared to 10 years ago. Better different or worse different, immeasurably better. Sebastian accepted the beer and pulled her against his side. I was successful before, but I was lonely. Didn't even realize how lonely until you forced your way into my life. I didn't force anything. You hired my agency. Best decision I ever made. They stood together, watching their family and friends enjoy the summer evening, and Sebastian marveled at the strange paths life took. A moment of violence had led to protection, which led to friendship, which led to love, which led to this. A backyard full of people who mattered, children who were their legacy, a partner who made every challenge worthwhile. Mom, Dad, watch this. Sophie called out, preparing to demonstrate some impressive feat that would probably give them both heart attacks. She's going to be trouble, Delilah murmured. She's going to be amazing, Sebastian corrected. Just like her mother. And Daniel's going to be brilliant like his father. They're going to be their own people, better than both of us combined. Delilah squeezed his hand. Definitely better than you anyway. Sebastian laughed and kissed her temple, tasting sunscreen and summer and home. They moved together to supervise whatever dangerous activity Sophie had planned. Partners in everything just like they'd promised. Building a life neither had imagined but both defended with everything they had. In the end, Marcus Chen's gun had pointed Sebastian toward the future he was always supposed to have. Delilah's precision and strength had saved his life that night, but her love had saved everything that came after. And Sebastian had guarded her heart just as fiercely as she'd guarded his life, protecting what they built together with the same determination that had made him successful in business. They were partners, parents, protectors of each other, and the life they'd created. The millionaire had been protected by his bodyguard, and in return, he'd protected her heart with everything he was. It was a fair trade, the best trade, the kind of perfect exchange that only happened when two people found exactly who they needed in the last person they expected. Years later, when Sophie asked how her parents met, Sebastian and Delilah would share a look full of memory and gratitude and love that had grown deeper with every passing year. "Your mother saved my life," Sebastian would say. "Your father saved mine right back," Delilah would add. And both statements would be absolutely true.